One of the astrological highlights of 2022 is the return of Pluto to 27 degrees Capricorn. That's the exact place in the sky that it was in at the signing of the Declaration of Independence. What does it mean? Let's turn now to two of our favorite astrologers on the East Coast. They occasionally lecture at Seattle's East-West Center. It's my pleasure to have you meet them. I will let them introduce themselves and where they're from.
My name is Nick Lasky.
And I'm John J. Oliver. And we are talking to you from Richmond, Virginia, beautiful Virginia, where we have true 4 seasons of the year and where we are the home of so many of I think more presidents have come from Virginia than anywhere else. And Virginia is also the home of so many famous psychics, including Edgar Casey and some of the remote viewers that were on the program of Stargate Pentagon. And we are from the Aquarian Bookshop in Richmond, Virginia.
Yes. Do you guys still have that beautiful storefront that's a mural?
That was the original bookshop. However, that has been transformed in a Plutonian process into a grocery store called Publix. And so the Aquarian has moved and now 2 locations. But yes, there was an amazing mural with the Aquarian man on the side.
The water bearer on the side. And what's amazing about it is that as soon as we had a Neptune transit, the day of the Neptune transit, we were watching the bulldozers just bulldoze the shopping center that the Aquarian was in, but we were across the street from the new Aquarian watching the bulldozing, because as we know, one of the functions of Neptune is that it dissolves things, and we just watched that shopping center dissolve. So the mural has been dissolved, and so it is coming to you now from the astral plane.
Yes, it still exists on the astral plane.
Cool. All right. We're going to talk about the Pluto return, which you all are really excited about, and you did something to celebrate it already. I definitely felt a shift, but I'll let you guys explain all the ins and outs of the first Pluto return.
I think we cannot talk really about Pluto unless we talk about transformation, and to really have some sense of what transformation is. Transformation on a personal level is something that is not easy, because all of us are attached to our individual identities, and we're also attached to our collective identity, who we are, for example, as a nation, because this Pluto return we're talking about is not in the return chart of a human being, because that doesn't happen, because you have to live to be over 240 some years old in order to have a Pluto return. So you're going to take at least 2 lifetimes to have a Pluto return if you even know your chart from the last lifetime, right? But the country's Pluto return means that collectively right now there is a pull to transform. I like the metaphors a lot of going into a cauldron, where something goes into the cauldron, like the alchemist cauldron, that goes in one condition and comes out as something else. The hopeful thing to me about the immediate direness of Pluto is that from it comes amazing beauty if we allow the transformation that is uncomfortable, because by nature transformation is very uncomfortable, to go through the stages of I am what I am. I take a break from that and go into a cocoon. I'm in the cocoon. I'm in the underworld. I'm, withering in loss, or not knowing where I am, or isolation, or lack of identity. And in going through that, then emerging the other side as a new butterfly, because I've bothered to go through the transformation. So our country, the United States of America, who was seated on some very beautiful dreams and some very intense pathologies, we are in the cocoon now. And hopefully in this process of these multiple returns that are this process of the return, it's going to take years to see what the effects on the country and the collective, are. But I'm very, very hopeful that butterflies are going to be coming out everywhere. There's going to be such a new paradigm shift. Yeah, Pluto, there's going to be some death, there's going to be some intensity in that regard, but there's going to be a lot of birth out of that. I like to explain astrological things, to also look at either myth or look at the tarot cards, for example. In the tarot, the third card is the Empress. We're all familiar with the Empress. She's Mother Nature. She's the abundance of the forest. She's the fruit trees blooming everywhere. She is Aphrodite, the goddess, Venus, harmony in the universe, nature, forever pregnant and forever, having sex, basically, forever giving life, forever being fertile. But then in the tarot, the Emperor's card is number 3. The next time we see the number 3 is in the number 13. And the 13 is the death card. So the death and life go together. This is Persephone going to the underworld, not to be diminished, but then to emerge as the queen of life and then the queen of the dead. So the Empress, the death card, Persephone, queen of the living and of nature, Persephone, queen of the dead. And that cycle is forever and ever going and forever and ever resurrecting. So in a way, we could say America is going through a death, but the most important thing is we are going in the process of a wonderful and glorious resurrection, for which I'm very optimistic for, despite the intensity that we are going to encounter.
Well, that yes. So I would love to answer this question and approach it from a very different lens, and that is so one of the ways that we can understand the Pluto return of any country is to look at these cycles. And so, just as John mentioned, we can't really look at that at a human because these years, folks aren't living to around 250 like back in the good old days. But countries and empires certainly are. So what we did a lecture, and I did extensive research on countries that have had Pluto returns. And so there's a few choice countries that I found some very interesting things to look at what was happening when they had their Pluto returns, to understand as a reference point as to what we may be experiencing here in this country. The other way we can really understand it is by looking at the cycles that this country, the United States, is having with its own Pluto. Just in the same way that we have new moon, and then we have a quarter moon, and then we have a full moon, and then another quarter moon and a full moon. When it comes to the USA's Pluto return, we also have that quarter phase, the full phase, the other quarter phase, and where we are now is that return. It's come back to the same place. So I just want to share a couple key, let's say, threads that I've seen being woven through this whole tapestry of the USA's Pluto cycle, as well as looking at a few other countries. And it's a few things that I've written down that I just want to make sure I cover. And that is this. The first thing that is going to very much, and is unfolding right now in this very minute, actually, is the economy is tremendously going to be experiencing a restructuring and a great transformation. I mean, literally in the past couple days, I think gas has gone up like $1, and who knows what's going to happen next week. I mean, it's so, and that's just a tiny example, but because the planet Pluto in the birth chart of the United States is in one of the houses that pertains to money. And in terms of a country, this has everything to do with the economy. So I believe the economy is going to be an extremely easy to see representation of the Pluto return in terms of restructuring of the economy, perhaps also a transformation and change of actually our currency. We're seeing the rise of these cryptocurrencies, perhaps a national cryptocurrency, regulations and things like that. There's going to be a push to go to a cashless society. Let's see what happens. So the economy, and also as part of that, redistribution of wealth. We could go on for eons about that, but it's happening. Civil unrest in the country divided is another huge thing. The core piece that I see about the Pluto return for the United States is basically a humongous power struggle. And it's unfolding everywhere. Corporations, politicians, political parties, even down to we're seeing major power struggles in schools, in school districts, and school boards about, what should be taught. Should kids be wearing masks in the middle of the pandemic? Parents are at odds with teachers. Teachers that are at odds with school boards. Where are the children? There's a huge power struggle that's unfolding, and it's really infecting, or it's almost being applied to every facet of our lives. So Pluto, in a very strong way, is also about this power struggle, and that transformation comes from powers kind of grinding against each other. So power struggle really strongly unfolding politically and civilly. Racial reckoning. This is a really, really big, important one that we really saw so clearly in 2020 with the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement. But this country has a very, very ugly past and a lot of karma to bring into some kind of healing, or begin that process. And I believe we've begun that process, but there is so much reckoning that needs to happen in regards to the African American community, in regards to indigenous communities, in regards to all people of color. And also, one of the things that I fully believe we're seeing now, but there's going to be such a proliferation that is unprecedented, is the rise in power, the empowerment of people that have been oppressed. And so, for example, like Kamala Harris being the first woman of color as the vice president, and I can't remember her name, but the black woman that was just appointed to the Supreme Court. There are so many examples of people, women, people of color that have been oppressed by the patriarchal system that will be rising to power. We're going to see in the decade to come a huge proliferation of this. The final thing, and this is what is so interesting, and our lecture is recorded, but one of the key pieces I talked about at the end was about the United States' energy and resources, because Pluto rules the resources or the wealth that is in the earth. Now, that is one way of looking at it. I don't like to look at it. That's a way of commodifying the earth.
Oil.
Exactly. But our relationship with our energy. And so Pluto, for sure, represents oil. And so what we're seeing right now with the transformation and, shutting down our imports from Russian oil, I fully expect this to bring about a huge change of what we're doing here with our energy. And I strongly hope and expect it's also going to be a bigger shift to renewable resources. But I think part of the big power struggle is going to be that, okay, now we need to be fully autonomous and, relying on ourselves. But then there's going to be this huge pushback with, well, we don't want oil. We don't want it to continue to facilitate an oil-based economy. We want renewables. And so our relationship with our energy and what sustains us is also going through a tremendous transformation over these years to come. The final thing I want to say is there are a few specific dates of this Pluto return that I wanted to acknowledge. We've already had the first one. It was February 20th. The second one is July 12th. And then the final one is going to be December 28th. Okay, so this year, 2022, is the big year of the Pluto return. But just like John said, it is not going to be experienced in 1 year. We are going to be experiencing this for many, many, many years.
Nick Lasky and John J. Oliver are available for private consultations and classes at the Aquarian Bookshop in Richmond, Virginia.